about negotiating.
I always find CITES to be a very emotional experience. I think anytime when we can get leaders from around the world together in one place, it's a remarkable experience.
So CITES for me is a love-hate relationship.
It's two huge conference halls full of people, and they're discussing pretty much the fate of each animal that is on proposal there.
What is happening now in all of the world, in certain ways, it's mirroring into CITES.
I thought it was more or less just, go there and save animals, but it's mostly about negotiating trade between country to country.
Now this is my third CITES. I realized that politics, it's understanding the parties, it's understanding the needs of each one of these countries, and trying to navigate a way to protect these animals while simultaneously fulfilling the needs of the host countries, the range states where these animals thrive or don't thrive.
It's pure politics. People are really negotiating fiercely.
It's mostly whatever people want to barter for.
As a human, I think it is concerning, disheartening to see people constantly looking at animals solely for their economic value.
It's kind of odd that the animal is not number one. The money and the financial value of it has priority here.
It's a feeling I also get outside the CITES, that we don't have a grasp on reality, we don't have a grasp on what we're actually doing.
A lot of people aren't connected with animals these days. There's 12 of the species left, and we're going to decide if there's going to be an and in the sentence or a but in the sentence, and you're like, I don't get it, just say no more. But for some reason, they just cannot do that.
People have different motivations, and I think we're seeing that collision here at CITES.
We're running out of species. We're running out of fish. We're just overfishing it all.
You hear a lot about numbers, fish stock, for example, or just livestock.
As a scientist, I am very interested in the data, in where did they collect this data.
We tend to forget the importance of data. People don't understand data, and so they just disregard it.
People need to eat, and so they'll just, they'll just keep fishing until, hopefully not till they're all gone.
Oftentimes, two differing opinions bring with them a completely different set of data, and we have to discern which is more believable.
All the story of mako sharks, in which we had some countries saying, oh, well, the data tells us that there are plenty of them. And on the other side, they're saying, oh, no, there are not enough. And it was really difficult to understand who was saying the truth.
They might both be completely believable, but which is the sounder science?
If we don't know, let's take the worst scenario.
And that's what we do. I mean, that's why we're here at CCA Foundation. That's why we're here fighting.
You think, well, I'm just sitting there, one of 3,000 people, how can I make a difference?
Just to be in that mix and be involved in any way is remarkable to me. And I'm extremely proud to be part of that process.
So, I mean, you have to get off your chair, out of your comfort zone a little bit, but if you really want to, you can make a difference, and you can meet people, you can tell them, you can show them scientific data.
And sometimes it's like you're fighting the giants. So sometimes you feel like you can't do anything, and then you get a little win in, and that's what it's really all about.
The more diverse our talent and our skill set and our people are, the stronger case that we can make, and the stronger influence we have within the CITES conference.
That might change your vote, and maybe one vote or two is just enough to get the proposal approved. So yes, it's definitely worth it to come.
So I'm really super happy to be here in CITES in Geneva, in Switzerland, with the greatest team. We've been able to document what has happened here. It is a historic moment. I'm always very touched and proud to be part of this international conference of the parties.
And welcome to our August edition of the Icon series. As you saw from the film that we presented, this is a very serious topic for us right now, and we are very fortunate to have a partnership with a sustainable organization, CSAVE, and our long-term friend and colleague, Georgienne Bradley, who we've known Georgienne as an expedition leader for us years ago to Costa Rica, as well as a photojournalist and independent documentary filmmaker. So Georgienne, why don't you go ahead and explain to us how you got involved with CITES and what CITES actually does to help preserve our marine world. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Elisa, so much. And I want to just take a minute and thank you and Caradonna and the team over there for producing this Icon series. I've watched them all, and you've had some really great speakers, and I'm so humbled to be among them. Thank you. And I also wanted to just take a moment to thank Toby Meinken of 4 Elements Video, who worked with us and created the video that you just screened. So thank you, Toby, and your team. Yes, I met you quite a few years ago, and it's been a great journey from science. I went to medical school. I worked through the AIDS crisis as an immunologist, and then one day was asked if I was interested in becoming part of the Cousteau team, and it was a life changer. I never looked back, and I started a life of exploration and excitement and passion. And that began with writing articles, photojournalist packages, and I think that's about the time I met you and your team. Very exciting time. And then we switched again. We pivoted and started telling stories about the ocean and what most people never have the opportunity of seeing. And as we did that, we realized that we needed to do even more. We needed to double down on the stories that we were telling, tell them to people who could actually make a difference, place a vote, and protect the oceans that we all so love, and that we're among the privileged few to be able to dive into them and actually become part of them for a very short period of time.
So what is your role at CITES, and who are in the international global community that comes to CITES, and what is their goal? I think that there are dual kind of purposes. Some are to protect their business, and you're there to protect marine life. Can you tell us a little bit about the dynamics of that? Sure.
Very complicated question. The more I learn about CITES, the more complex it becomes in my own mind. It's an international treaty. It was formed in 1973, and the nation states of the United Nations were brought in and were the original foundational members of CITES. Private interest groups are also part of the mix. Those include fisheries. They also include scientists and environmental organizations that bring educational modules that can actually show the delegates what are the nuances, what are the economics involved in the decisions that they're about to make. And I think that's very critical. So you basically have international delegates from approximately 197 countries. You have the interests such as trophy hunters, fisheries, etc., who look at wildlife as sort of a lucrative business. And you have environmental conservation organizations that are trying to protect those animals.
All righty. Well, why don't you then take us a walk through your experience, and if we have any questions, we will bring them up throughout the presentation.
Well, thank you so much.
I think basically, just to start with CSAVE Foundation and our raison d'etre, if you will, CSAVE Foundation stands witness to the health of the oceans and the threats that they face. We document problems and we try to develop solutions and arm people with that knowledge, the general public, as well as voting officials. We also try to distribute tools so that they can make a difference. And then with the public as our ally, we go to the United Nations and international treaty conferences where we can actually influence the vote and influence our mission, influence challenges that are happening on the global stage. So we always need to be on our feet. We need to be creative. We need to look for economically viable, sustainable, and environmentally friendly plans. If we arrive at an international treaty or at a United Nations conference and try to convince decision makers to protect animals because they're cute or because they're our favorite animal, we're not going to affect much change. We really need to build something that will work for them when they return to their country. We need to keep in mind that there are many people who are employed as fishermen. How are they going to feed their families? There are a lot of things that we need to keep in our minds as we are entering these events.
And I know that your motto is to save the marine world one species at a time, and you live by that, and you have been able to affect change, certainly with several of your initiatives that have been ratified, and we're very proud of you in the dive industry for all you've done for this cause.
Thank you so much. We do our best. I think that CSAVE does a great job. We're very small, we're nimble, and we are, I would be amiss if I didn't say there are other organizations that work side by side with CSAVE in trying to affect this change, and also for-profit organizations such as Caradonna and the many dive companies that support us. We're very, very proud of all of the people who come in and support our critical work. To date, the CITES Treaty has protected to varying degrees approximately 35,000 animals that are endangered, threatened animals. And I'm going to start at the beginning. Basically, our first CITES was in Thailand. And this was, gosh, it was such an awakening moment. I envisioned going to this conference in Thailand, and we were all going to join together and protect the animals of the world. This is, sort of what I had envisioned. Of course, I was prepared. I had read up on what we were going to be presenting and who the fellow attendees were going to be, but there was no way I could be prepared for what I was to encounter. And that was very big money interests, playing dirty, and just hours and hours of negotiation and debate over animal species. Perhaps there were 7 known individuals left in the world, and yet we were negotiating 2 of those individuals that could be harvested, and I couldn't believe it. So that took a few days to get over. And if you're to imagine 10 days of intense negotiations in multiple languages, we were sending out blogs in 3 or 4 languages. We had volunteers around the world helping us, translating, sending out information so that we could bring pressure and be very transparent, sort of pull back the veil on what was going on at CITES. And in 2013, I think there was much less known about this critical international treaty than there is today. I think we were oh yeah, here's part of our group, Giving the Fin. Many of you may remember that was a big campaign just to raise awareness. And yeah, just walking in, feeling very proud to be on site, but I don't know, just also feeling the pressure. So the animals at that first conference were hammerheads. We were particularly targeting scalloped hammerheads, but there's something at CITES called look-alike animals. So scalloped hammerheads were the prime target of our protection, but also similar species, the great hammerhead and others were also protected under that. We also won the oceanic white tip protection under Appendix 2. And we also had poor beagles and manta rays that we successfully protected during that time. And I guess at the moment of elation is when they project these results that you're seeing right here. You can imagine, and we fought for hours and hours and hours, and then we won, and we won big. It was a hard go, but yeah.
So Georgienne, you also, I hear, and you and I have talked about this, that you actually went undercover. So because there's a stealth side of what you've done and what you've been able to accomplish, and really kind of make what goes on at CITES transparent for everyone that you're communicating with throughout the convention. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, that was very exciting, and actually it culminated with our team being offered a security escort out of the country, which I think you guys might have some, do you have that footage of, it's very, undercover. We're running in, and so basically we received a tip, and we were told that China and Japan were going to be taking out members of the West African nations. We had spent days working on passing the proposals of the hammerheads, oceanic white tips, poor beagles, manta rays, and then lo and behold, the final day, all of these proposals that we fought so hard to win are brought up for ratification. So that final day, many delegates actually go home, and we're stuck trying to get them ratified. Well, this happened the night before, and at the end, I realized I hadn't gotten the footage I needed, so I ran inside the restaurant, and I was able to get the faces of many of the people participating in this event, where there were I guess women of the night and briefcases full of money that we saw earlier. And what we did was we went home that evening and identified who we had just videoed and put it up on social media. Back then, you could post on a country's Facebook page without any problem. They didn't have the I guess they're now a bit more careful, and they didn't have that tool. So we posted all over and identified who we were seeing, and the next morning it blew up. And all over the world, we were seeing in English, French, German, people calling out their representatives who they had just seen in this video and saying, look, you're making us look really bad. Why don't you, represent us well and stop making us look like a banana republic? So that really
was a confrontation for you on a certain level. You were feeling quite intimidated by basically showing the world that where people were having sidebar meetings, kind of like pushing their own agenda, and you uncovered that and in a successful way. As we go through the presentation, it would be great if we could clarify each CITES that you attend. You have an agenda of species that you are going through and protecting. We saw some of them earlier on, and just tell us a little bit about how you determine and what is involved in selecting the species that you're going to put your cause through for.
Well, just as in the United States, a bill is introduced, there are sponsors and co-sponsors. The proposals are introduced by countries. So countries and become the sponsor or co-sponsors, etc. And then we're sent the information, we're sent the data, we're sent the, we understand why this particular species is being proposed as a candidate for appendix. And just so you also understand, there are 3 different levels of appendices. One is the most strict. There is no trade at all. Level 2, where most of our successes have landed, will allow some trade, but loads of paperwork. So it really makes it untenable for the fisheries, et cetera. They don't make a profit because there is just so many hoops they need to jump through. So, and then there's Appendix 3, where many animals land if they're being considered for the following CITES. CITES happens on a 3-year cycle, so they still need to wait 3 years. So and so each year we are given a sort of a roster of animals, and actually in Johannesburg in 2016, the animals were, and I think, let's see, I think we might have some photos of these guys. Technical, yeah, this is arriving. We're going to have the Secretariat in Johannesburg, and so this year we actually had thresher sharks, silkies, mobile arrays, and cardinal fish, as well as the chambered nautilus. And I wanted to jump to the chambered nautilus because this is actually a really interesting case of where CSAVE jumped in and did something that we weren't even anticipating. So we're very prepared. We're walking into the conference with a white paper with reasons, economic arguments as to how these animals will actually help the economy of especially the host countries. We came one night, we're talking to the US delegation, and we were told that the Nautilus was coming up for vote the next day, or most likely would come up for vote the next day. And it was feared that the Nautilus was going to lose because many of these delegates didn't know what a Nautilus was. Now, if they saw what it was, as you see on this slide, everyone recognizes the Nautilus. It's one of the most popular pieces of souvenir sold around the world. And we needed to just make that very, very simple connection. And, we sat down and, racked our brains and came up with what I think was a very simple solution. We went on the internet, and if anybody recognizes these images, please forgive me because we had no time, and we grabbed this and put it on a one-sheeter and ran to the Johannesburg Kinko's and printed it out. And we're able to put one of these on the desk of every voting delegate that morning before the vote. And we won by a very slim margin. And I'd like to think that we were important in making sure we passed that the vote. We got it passed because people could make the connection as to what is this animal, what is a nautilus, and why we want to make sure it's there for our children and for the next generation. Interestingly enough, in 2016, while CSAVE really focuses on marine animals. That was also the year that the community proposed the international protection of the pangolin. And this is particularly interesting now because one of the theories of how COVID was transmitted to humans was through this small animal at a wet market in Wuhan, China. So this shows that we're entering a time where people might be very interested in looking at the unhealthy balance that humans have with the natural world, and how homeostasis and how protecting that wild world will actually help us and protect us in the long run. I'm gonna probably, yeah, these are these are the other guys that we were able to protect, the mobile array, the cardinal fish, and others.
So
yes.
Georgienne, with that in mind, we recently saw several fishing boats from China over near Ecuador and Galapagos. And if you could explain a little bit about how sometimes when you do pass your initiatives, it only impacts certain regions. It's not on a global scale where it's, you know, everyone agrees to it. If I'm correct in saying that, you know, how is it that China can send vessels all the way to Ecuador and Galapagos and just fish away and take off their radar so they're not even being tracked? And these are some of the challenges that you face, I'm sure, on a regular basis.
Wow, that is a great question. And I think I'll just break it down into a couple sections. And thank you very much for that, because that is an oft seen question. One is, you know, what do these decisions mean if there are poachers out there? And my answer to that is always, well, there are three modules that are required for change and for protection of our wild world. One is to educating the populace and educating our decision makers. The second is to enact laws. They have to be there. You have to have laws. And then enforcement. Enforcement is critical. CITES is only applicable during trade. So any sovereign nation is still able to do whatever they want within their national borders. So if X country wants to harvest the last of any species, they are free to do so. We can't take away the right of any country from doing what they want to do. And unfortunately, the high seas falls into that category, not being part of a sovereign nation, but being somewhat of a free-for-all. There are efforts now that are in play that would actually bring an international treaty together that would decide how do we treat those blue waters, because as we all know, our oceans and the marine life that lives in our oceans do not recognize political boundaries. Many of them are migratory species, and they're they're all over the place. we can't take care of that. So in the particular case that you're talking about, it's horrific, and as you can imagine, it's so disheartening for us, but it is a reality of life. Our technology is increasingly good, and where we can get these poachers is when the fins, because this was an effort to get fins, which are very valuable on the open market. How do we, one, stop them, incarcerate them, and fine them at such a level that it becomes, again, untenable? And also, you know, how do we change the minds of people? It used to be that China was the top buyer for shark fin. That's decreased significantly. There were some very clever marketing campaigns that went on. Yao Ming was on the forefront of many of those, and he really helped change in a culturally sensitive way the way people in China view shark fin. However, now the primary buyers are found in Indonesia, Vietnam, where we're seeing a increasing middle class, larger middle class, who can now afford this symbol of wealth. Shark fin soup largely symbolizes, wow, I've made it. Look, I can now serve shark fin soup at my daughter's wedding. And they've wanted this forever. And now they can have it, and they're being told, no, you should not have this because there aren't enough sharks. And we need to find a better way to get to the people, because, as another organization has coined, when the buying stops, the killing stops too. And that's true. So we need to figure out clever ways to get that buying to stop. Did I answer the question?
Absolutely. And what that does is it for just those of us who don't have the scientific background or not exposed to this on a daily basis, the dive market is, but we have an audience that is interested in our product from all different types of things that we do, but it helps kind of make it relatable, understandable, when we kind of see why this is happening, what's driving, people going out and just capturing, species and eliminating them. And so, yes, thank you. You did.
Well, thank you. And I'd like to add to that, when you meet the fishermen, the people who are actually fishing, they're on tiny, not even ocean-worthy, smelly, slippery, disgusting boats. I mean, they're putting their lives on the line to go out and fish. They are making very little money. These fishermen are trying to feed their families. This is what they know. It's not as if they can leave this job and go get a job, with Google tomorrow. They're in their village around the world. Many of these people just don't have the wherewithal, the capacity to change jobs. And so when you see that, you understand, okay, this is where being clever comes in. How do we transition? And this is where I believe scuba diving has really helped, because what a natural transition. People who understand currents, who understand where the fish are, who understand if you can grab that population and retrain them to become scuba divers and scuba instructors, dive masters, they become the logical choice to bring people underwater and show them the beautiful area in their local country. And their pay goes up as well. So it's not as if they'll learn how to scuba dive and go back and fish and know how to scuba dive and find the fish better or something. That I've heard that brought up, but no, it's a much better lifestyle. And I think we're supporting that change by being involved in our sport. So Geneva was a very interesting. This was the last COP that we went to. COP stands for Conference of the Parties, and it was originally supposed to be in Sri Lanka, and as you know, that was stopped abruptly by the terrorist attacks 2 weeks prior to us arriving in CITES in Sri Lanka. Our hotels, the host hotels, were actually those that were attacked. So it was postponed, and it later convened in Geneva. And at that COP, we had on our agenda mako sharks and wedgefish. Also, the sea cucumber was protected, many species of sea cucumber, as well as guitarfish. So we think, just so that people can see these beautiful animals that are, the mako shark was the most heated debate, and that was because, why? There's not enough data in all the oceans. Why isn't there enough data? Because we can't find the sharks. to count. Why can't we find the sharks to count? Well, I'm sure there are many theories, but it would seem to be a logical theory because there aren't very many of them. And so we're having a hard time, with that. If you can't find the animals to count, and then we have our guitar sharks and our wedgefish, and also the sea cucumber who evidently didn't make it into our slideshow. So anyway, this being part of CITES is certainly an honor and a privilege. And how I see our way forward, we really need to make change at an international level. It's as far upstream as we can possibly go. Indeed, it is flawed. And indeed, we find poachers. There are desperate and hungry people around the world, and there are nefarious people with wealth that we can't even imagine who are driving this. However, we are winning. We're making a difference. And so I'm very, very happy to be part of this, this great effort.
Thank you, Georgienne. We wanted to also have you maybe tell our audience how they can participate. What can we do at our level to help make change and become more aware of what the topics are and understand them?
There's so many things that people can do. Number one, try to read as much as possible. And this is not just about what's going on in our oceans, but around the world on our, in all of our natural areas. It's very important that people stay informed, to learn what is primary source material, how to vet your material. Don't get your information off of memes on websites, etc. Don't even believe what I'm saying right now. Go to the CITES website, read what has happened, who has brought what proposals, what has been protected, what the different protection levels mean. Please, I would encourage you to sign up at seasave.org, or at least visit seasave.org, and hopefully sign up for our newsletter so that as we prepare for the next CITES, you can stay informed. And if you're interested, you can sign up for our Ocean Week in Review, which comes to your inbox every Friday, which includes the primary source material whenever possible, and mainstream articles from around the world talking about new discoveries, new animals being found, challenges, poaching, infractions, new laws, all kinds of ocean-related news. So yeah, I think that's how people can best stay involved. We also have opportunities to volunteer. During COVID, some people are sitting home and wondering what they can do. And if you find the right fit, bring your professional skills to our team and swim with our pod. But thank you very, very much for hosting us and for allowing us this opportunity to communicate what it is that we're doing and that we hope to continue to do.
Thank you, Georgienne, and thank you, CSAVE organization and all of the partners that you have working with you. We very much appreciate your efforts and hope to continue on to do greater things to save our marine species and our planet. Thank you, Georgienne.
Thank you.
Bye-bye now.